show that is called Real Shame. It's a show where us two guys, watch movies from our movie list of shame or movie blind spot. Basically, movies that we should have seen, but we haven't, but now we are. I'm Adam.
I am Andy.
All right, this week we're watching two movies that I've never seen before. And you know what the name of the first movie is because you can read and you are literate. So why don't we jump into that right now? And that movie is
John, Paul, George, and Ringo. If you've ever heard of those guys, probably not. They're the four most popular lads in the world. They have a busy schedule getting ready for a TV performance, answering fan mail, and taking care of Paul's grandfather in A Hard Day's Night.
I know. How's it going?
Thank God you've all got here.
So?
Now look, I've had a marvellous idea. Just for once, let's all try to behave like ordinary, respectable citizens. Let's not cause any trouble, pull any strokes, or do anything I'm going to be sorry for. Especially tomorrow in that television theatre. Because... Are you listening to me, Lennon?
You're a swine. Any George? You're a swine.
Thanks. Hey!
Who's that little old man?
Well, who is he?
He belongs to Paul.
Oh, well. I'm going down for a cup of coffee. Anyone coming?
We'll follow you down.
I want me coffee.
Well, you can come with Shake and me if you like.
Look after him. I don't want to find you've lost him.
Don't be cheeky. I'll bind him to me with promises. Very clean, isn't he? Come on, Grandad.
So A Hard Day's Night was released in 1964, the summer of 1964. It's directed by Richard Lester. Richard Lester pretty much, I think of it more as like a comedy kind of director, but he went on to direct the Beatles in the movie Help. In 1965, he made movies like Robin and Marion with Sean Connery and Audrey Hepburn in the 1970s. He did work on Superman 2 when they canned Richard Donner.
Yeah, that's
so
how
there's a Donner cut and there's a Lester cut of Superman 2. And then he went on to just outright direct Superman 3, which is terrible in my opinion. Although it's not as bad as Superman 4. But Superman 3 is very slapsticky and comedic, much more so than I would like it to be. Hard Day's Night.
Is that where Superman gets like drunk at the bar and he's like fucking peanuts at the mirror and stuff?
Yep. Yeah.
Classics.
Oh god.
Classic Superman scene.
Hard Day's Night was written by Alan Owen, and it stars obviously John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr because they are the Beatles. But in addition to those four fellas, it stars Wilfrid Bramble as John McCartney. He plays Paul McCartney's grandfather in the film. Norman Rossington plays their manager, Norm. John Junkin plays Shake. And it has small parts. I mean, they don't even have speaking roles, but if you look closely, you can see Patty Boyd, who later would get married to George Harrison, and then later would get married to Eric Clapton in the late 1970s. It has Charlotte Rampling in one little scene. I didn't see her, but she's in there apparently. And even Phil Collins, a very young Phil Collins. I think he would have been about 13 years old, or 13 or 14 in the crowd at one point. I didn't see him either. I don't know if you did.
You probably could have shown me the piece, the still of it, and I still wouldn't have found Phil Collins unless he was like here. Bald.
Same here, yeah, exactly. Yeah, he looked the same then as he does now. No, but apparently they're in the film. Nobody else in the film. I mean, there are some other people in the film that may be of note, but I feel like I listed the major people. But this is a movie that I've seen. I know one time all the way through. I may have seen bits and pieces of it here and there, but I have not seen this movie in a long time. I know this is a movie that you have never seen. But this is obviously, I know you've heard of it. Obviously, we've talked about the Beatles on the show because we talked about Get Back a few months ago or not too long ago, whenever that came out on Apple, or Disney Plus, rather, not Apple, Disney Plus, that came out. So we've talked about the Beatles recently. We're all fully aware, and all you at home, whatever, are fully aware of who the Beatles are. But what did you know about A Hard Day's Night going into it, if anything?
Yeah, not much. I mean, I know that they've done quite a few of these kind of films, right? They did like Yellow Submarine, Sgt. Pepper, Hard Day's Night. I'm sure they did one between Yellow Submarine and this movie.
They did Help.
Oh yeah, they did. I think Help is like the
Magical Mystery Tour, which was like a TV special that they did, and then of course there's the Let It Be film, which I think you got.
I did watch that.
Yeah, you watched that, and now Get Back on Disney Plus. So there's a lot of Beatles on film, but I think this is the first film that they. Well, I don't
Yeah.
think
Before
I'm
social
fairly
media.
certain this is the first. Yeah, this is the first film that they did.
Yeah,
So,
this is like YouTube before YouTube.
YouTube before YouTube.
So yeah, I didn't know much about it going into it. I just knew that they had like a bunch of these, and that not each album, but maybe like each period were kind of like, had one of these kind of films that came out and all that kind of stuff. And I've been wanting to check them all out because I am a fan of the Beatles, and would like to kind of cross some of those things off my list and stuff like that. So in watching this, I, I I'm kind of, I don't know how I feel about it. I feel like it's a mixed bag because I like seeing the Beatles and all the stuff, and I like the parts where they're singing and they're doing stuff like when they're on the train car and they're playing and singing together, or when they finally get to the show and they're doing that. I liked, but all the story elements, they didn't really work for me. And it felt like the movie's probably more story than it is musical numbers and stuff like that. Um, so so that stuff didn't really work for me. I didn't really care about the story or them getting there. And then, I don't know if back in the 60s if people felt like this was a documentary and this is truly what happened, but I knew pretty much all the stuff that's happening they're running through is probably fiction and made up and all that kind of stuff. And it's just like not flights of fancy, but just kind of ways to get them into places to do different things and stuff like that. And I didn't need any of that. I would have preferred much more of a, get back kind of a documentary kind of thing. But I know that's not what this is. But that's something I would prefer over something like this.
Yeah.
The grandfather character was just weird. Like I don't know what he brought to the thing, and I know they said one line like they said, I forgot what it said, like
he's a clean old man.
He's a clean old man, which is, I was reading in the trivia, and apparently because the character plays like a lot of drunkards, I guess prior to that, that's why they were saying that. And I'm sure at the time, they're like, everyone got it, but for me, I'm just like, okay, that's a weird thing to say.
Yeah.
I found him really more annoying than anything. Although the one thing I did like was when he accidentally killed the magician's dove. Like, that was funny to me. Yeah. I don't know what that says about my sense of humor, but that was funny. Yeah. So for me, overall, it was just kind of a mixed bag. I really didn't care about the story, and I was just waiting for the elements to where they would get together and sing and do their thing. So, so it wasn't really something that I kind of enjoyed. I mean, I enjoyed it. I don't know. Like I said, mixed bag.
You enjoy the music aspect of it more than them kind of running around and all that.
And seeing them and stuff like that. But I even feel like their interactions isn't like to their personalities. But maybe it is. I don't know. It just felt like false to me, And I would have preferred more
Those
of
wires.
There's wires everywhere, holding things up. So that's my thought on it. So have you seen A Hard Day's Night before?
Yes, I've seen it all the way through. It's been a long time ago. I know when I saw it all the way through. I feel like I definitely like this movie more than you. I don't love it as much as I think a lot of people do. This movie has a lot of 4-star reviews. It's very, very highly rated, and I'm not knocking that at all. And I'm not saying that I think those people are wrong or anything like that. I'm kind of in between where you are and where they are. I think this movie. It's great as like a time capsule kind of thing, as showing who the Beatles were, because this is 1964.
But is it like an accurate portrayal of who they were, or is it just fiction of who they were?
Obviously, there's fictional aspects to it, and whatnot. But I know that some of the dialogue in the movie is taken from things that they actually said at press conferences and stuff like that. So I think there's they've incorporated fact along with their fiction. They had to make a silly little movie just for movie's sake, right, to make the story or whatever. But obviously they're playing their songs, they're playing their kind of music. The whole idea of them being endlessly mobbed by teenage girls, we'll see a little bit more of that on Wednesday. Is accurate. The grandfather stuff is obviously all fake and whatnot, but I think it's cool just to see them. I mean, because this is at the point where, at this point, they'd already done the Ed Sullivan Show, because they did that in February 1964. Again, foreshadowing for Wednesday's episode. But that they were becoming massively popular at this point, and this was the first film that they did. So this is like a way for every kid in America to go to the movie theater and see him, because not everybody got a chance to see them in concert, obviously, back in the day. But I think it's fun just as like a time capsule kind of thing. It does have great music, obviously, because the Beatles wrote like almost no bad songs, really, or arguably no bad songs if you're a huge fan. But I think it's cool. One thing I was reading about afterwards is that, and I don't think that we think about this so much now because it's so much later, but they were talking about how everybody, basically MTV and music videos owe Richard Lester a huge debt of gratitude
for doing stuff
because he kind of pioneered the whole thing with this movie, with his cutting and that kind of thing, and because there are basically like little music videos throughout the movie whenever they do their songs and whatnot. And so they talk about that, but that sort of thing is kind of lost on me because I'm so used to seeing. I grew up with MTV.
We grew up in the 80s.
So seeing this now, I don't think of it, but yeah, I mean, I guess that is true. But I look at it more, and I think I enjoy it more on the basis of it just being kind of a good encapsulation of the Beatles when they're really, really starting to take off. I mean, I guess 1964 is probably arguably the height of their popularities.
Yeah.
They're becoming really massive all over the world, not just in England. But I think I like it for that reason. I actually really like the grandfather character, which is funny.
Really? Interesting.
Because I remember the first time I watched this, I think I felt like you did. I was like, who is this guy? Like, what is it? But I actually found him to be really funny. He's just so weird.
He's so weird.
But I think he's funny because he's like an anarchist, I mean, he's like down with authority. Like when he gets arrested by the cops, he's like, "Oh, what are you gonna do? You're gonna rough me up, and all this stuff." So he's very kind of anti-authoritarian, anti-establishment. He encourages Ringo to like get out and like see the world and all this other stuff. He loves to drink and to gamble, right? He takes Ringo's invitation to the party and gets to go, and he's like staring at women and like all this kind of stuff. I mean, he's like he is a dirty old man.
Yeah,
like he played in the TV show. I was reading about that too because again, every time they called him a clean old man in the movie, I was like, is that some kind of in joke? Yeah, it's lost on us. But the show he was in was called Steptoe and Son, and he's referred to on that show as a dirty old man all the time, apparently. So yeah, that was like the in joke. But yeah, that's very much of its time. That's not something that modern audiences would necessarily get. But I thought he was actually really funny. He's actually, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the Beatles and love the Beatles music, but he's kind of my favorite part about the film.
Oh, interesting.
Honestly, yeah. I just think he's kind of funny. But
yeah, it's interesting. I think, listening to everything you said, sounds like resonates with me and seems true. I just, part of me watches this and, feels like it's like the Larry David, Curb Your Enthusiasm, or like Seinfeld, where it's like they're playing caricatures of themselves and stuff. So again, this is not what this movie is, but I would prefer more of a documentary to this just to see how things actually work, because I don't need that kind of stuff. But I do like that it is, like you said, the progenitor of what we would grow up with music videos and stuff like that. And I'm sure this movie helped and only helped to make it more popular and stuff like that. I think I'm ultimately glad I've watched it, and there might be things I go back to and refer back to, but I just don't feel like there's anything in there that really stands out in it to me that it's like, oh, I got to watch this scene again, or this part was really exceptionally well done, versus everything else, So that's kind of where I am, because I do kind of know what you said about it being very, very popular and very beloved, and just that I'm not getting that feeling in watching it,
Yeah, so I was thinking...
Except for the guy's sweater, the producer's sweater. I love that sweater.
You love that sweater? Yeah. I was thinking after I watched this, when I was a kid and I first got into the Beatles, because I first got into the Beatles in the 80s, in like the late 80s, and I was a young kid at that time. And to me, everybody that was older than me might as well have been 50 years old, right? Because as a kid, you see everybody as just being, oh man, they're ancient, right? Yeah. And they might be like 17 or something, but it's like, oh my God, they're old. So when I would see the Beatles, or when I would listen to their music, I just kind of took for granted how young they actually were whenever they were the Beatles. I mean, when you think about it, because the oldest Beatle is Ringo, and then Ringo and John,
and the youngest Beatle,
right?
Towards Wednesday,
in terms of who joined the band. Yeah, so Ringo and John were both born in 1940. I think Paul was born in 1942 and George Harrison was born in 1943. So at this point, Ringo hadn't even turned 24. He's the oldest. He was still 23. So everybody's 23, 21, 20 years old, basically, when this movie comes out. And when the Beatles broke up in 1970, they weren't even 30.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, like Ringo hadn't even turned 30 at that point, I don't think. So it's incredible to me that they were able to accomplish everything that they did basically in their 20s.
Yeah.
Like, and it makes me feel like a loser. I'm like, oh my God.
Totally, like,
you know,
like, a
like when
failure.
you think about how amazing their career was, you know, the four of them coming together and making this incredible music that, I mean, history will never forget the Beatles.
Yeah.
So it's incredible, I think, to think about that. But watching this kind of movie and seeing them very early in their, you know, their infancy, basically, the Beatles' infancy, although they were massively popular at this point, I think is, to me, the most kind of fascinating thing about the movie. But, I mean, I understand what you're saying. And again, I don't feel that this movie is quite the stratospheric masterpiece that I think a lot of other people do. I just kind of fall somewhere in between. I can enjoy it. I love the Beatles music, so I agree with you. I like the performances. I like the songs in it, Hard Day's Night, and the other songs that they perform in it, obviously. But I can see how a lot of the humor is maybe a little bit dated or maybe a little bit lost on you and I, and it doesn't always work. I think John to me is kind of the funniest character because I feel like he's always making like, you know, faces and just, he's very kind of animated. I think he's the funniest when he's in the bathtub and he's kind of singing, "Hey, oh, Britannia," wham, you know, he like hits the water and that kind of stuff. I also really like the part. He seems a little
like irreverent.
Yeah, exactly. And I also like the part where George Harrison gets corralled into like the fashion office and they're like, "Oh, what do you think about this shirt?" He's like, "That's gross. I wouldn't wear that." And they're like, "Oh, well, you don't know what you're talking about." And all this kind of stuff. And he's like, "Well, everybody hates that girl. Nobody likes this girl that's your spokesperson or whatever." And they're like, "Get out of here. Get him out." And then they're like, "Oh, well, but let's not extend her contract." So they actually take his advice despite the fact that they got mad at him for saying it. But they're like, maybe he's right. Maybe he knows what he's talking about. I find that kind of stuff funny.
But I don't think like they ever circled back around that because I wish they would have seen them like at the television studio and realized like, you know, because I feel like that is like a setup for something later on. It's like, we don't know who this famous person is, and all of a sudden it's like this famous person.
Yeah, you know? It's very non sequitur, right? It's just one thing after the other, and they don't all kind of neatly tie together. But I mean, I enjoy the grandfather. I think the most
where he just appears
out
on
of this
stage
movie.
and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. He's just a weird, clean little old man.
Apparently.
But anyway, so this movie was nominated for 2 Academy Awards. It was nominated for Best Original Screenplay, but it lost to the movie Father Goose, which stars, if I'm not mistaken, Cary Grant and Sophia Loren.
And no Beatles in that one.
No Beatles in that one. I've never seen that either. And it was also nominated for Best Score, Adaptation, or Treatment. So this was back in the days when they had like Best Original Score, and then they had Best Score, Adaptation, or Treatment. Later those would be combined. But it lost to that, and it lost to, and I feel like, I think it was 2 weeks ago that we did Dr. Strangelove. Dr. Strangelove lost to My Fair Lady on a lot of stuff. Beatles also lost to My Fair Lady for Best Score, Adaptation, or Treatment.
Eliza Doolittle, you can't hold her down.
That's
you can't hold her back.
Professor Henry Higgins and Eliza Doolittle steamrolled the Beatles, and as well as Father Goose did as well. But this movie is streaming currently on HBO Max, and it was released by Criterion in 4K.
Yep.
Ultra high def, 4K, 2160p earlier this year. So if you do not own a copy of A Hard Day's Night and you want it in the highest possible quality, you could buy the 4K Criterion Blu-ray, which is out now in stores near you. Okay. That's
buy it through our Amazon affiliate link. No, we don't have one.
It's 98% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. Wow. And if you transpose those numbers, it's 89% audience score. Roger Ebert gives it 4 stars. Leonard Maltin gives it 4 stars. Wow. So they're very, very high on this film.
Yep.
And again, we're Beatles fans.
Yeah, so
just
no so hate for the movie. It just
oh no, absolutely not. Yeah,
just for me, it's just I don't get it.
Maybe a little underwhelming.
A little underwhelming, you know. I'm also coming into it almost like 80 years later. Is that right? Is that how math works?
Not 80.
Not 80 years. Not 80. Maybe 60
almost
years
60,
later.
Almost 60,
almost 6 years later.
Not quite. All right.
So it's close. All right, so on these Monday episodes, I was going to say Wednesday episodes. I don't know where my head is at today.
You're 2 days ahead.
I'm 2 days ahead. I'm in the future, guys. On these Mondays episodes, we always like to talk about what we've been watching. So I'm going to toss it over to Andy. Andy, have you watched anything interesting lately?
Yes and no. I watched the brand new Scream movie. The 20
Alright.
what it come out 2022?
Yes, I think so.
Scream 2022. So
I
not
like-
Scream 1996, although it has the same title. And you said you saw this, right?
I did. I saw a couple months ago. I think.
And I don't remember you being super high on it. I don't remember what you thought of it. What did you think of it?
I think I overall thought it was
You
good.
did like it? Okay. I did not like it.
Okay.
This Scream is tired to me. I feel like they have completely worn it out. So I watched Scream 1 through 4 within the last couple of years because I know I talked about it on the show at one point. And I feel like Scream 1 through 4 are all watchable, but I do feel like they go down with each successive one. I feel like Scream, 1996 is the best one, and they just kind of go down from there. Although, Scream 2's okay, Scream 3's okay, whatever. But I think the new Scream, to me, it's too similar to some of the other Scream movies. I feel like they have just stretched this thing way past its breaking point. I do not think that the new Scream, again, I would say it's watchable, just like the other 4 Screams. I think it probably would have fared better if they had Scream 1 through 3, the original trilogy, and this was Scream 4.
Yeah.
Like if this, because honestly, it reminded me a lot of Scream 4.
Yes.
And I feel like it was just kind of a rehash of Scream 4. And for that reason, I didn't really like it. I also just think it's ridiculous now to the point, again, that they're trying to tie all this stuff together with Sidney Prescott and everything else. I think, my personal opinion is that, because they're going to make another Scream movie.
Yes.
I do not think that the next Scream movie should be Scream. I think it should be one of the Stab sequels. And I feel like they should dive straight into that universe and start making those. And then you can have meta stuff, because Scream is all about being meta. You can have Stab stuff be meta, because they've already done that with some of the Scream movies where they watch some of the Stab clips in those movies.
Yes.
Now let's get into the Stab universe. And again, start it off with like Stab 7 or something. Like have the next movie be Stab 7 instead of Scream 5 or 6 or whatever it is. Kind of do that. And then you can start making it meta with Sidney Prescott or something else. Maybe Sidney Prescott, you could do like a New Nightmare thing with Sidney Prescott meeting, Heather Graham's character or something like that. Or something, just something like that. Just to give it a shot in the arm. Instead of, because the last thing I want to see is Scream 6 and have it just be, a retread of Scream 3 or something like that, because it's ridiculous at this point. And I think it's ridiculous what they're trying to do with the franchise. And to me, it's just the best way I can describe it is it's just tired. It's tired and needs to be retired if they're going to keep doing what they're doing with the new Scream.
Yeah, I don't feel the same way you do with it. I do think that it is a little formulaic at this point, and they're kind of, how much they're trying to make it tied to Sidney Prescott. It is getting a little tenuous a little bit. It's like it can't.
I would say
can't
more
bear,
than that.
Can't bear
more
that
than
weight
tenuous,
anymore.
Yeah.
But I like how this one's like more violent, and it seems a little bit more modern in the take of it and stuff like that. And I still think 4 and 5 are better than 3. Like 3 is a pretty terrible movie, I think.
I think that they go in the order that they released as far as quality.
Oh no.
Yeah, I think so.
I definitely don't agree with that.
I think so.
Or is it 2 that's really bad? It's one of them. Either 2 or 3 is really bad. I have to think about it to know. But one of the original trilogies is terrible. It's really bad. So I can see it, but I don't really hate it. For me it's kind of like I give it a wide berth because I know what it is, right? Like I'm going into these movies. It's like, I judge it on different criteria because I'm like, we're in a Scream movie. This is what a Scream movie is going to be about. This is what it's going to be like. And I kind of take it for what it is, So I don't really, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I get it. I get what you're saying, but I don't necessarily agree. What else is?
To me, it's just the same. At this point, it's just the same movie.
Yeah.
Over and over. And I'm not into it.
They're kind of formulaic, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. The other movie that I was going to mention is a movie called Revenge, which was released, I think, in 2017. It is a French movie. There's a lot of French spoken in it. The main girl that's in it speaks English the whole time because she's an American girl. But you've heard of this movie where
I have. Yeah.
she basically, has to turn the tables on the guys that she's with, and
I feel like this was remade.
being hunted down by them, sort of. Well, it's definitely a callback to some movies like I Spit on Your Grave and Thriller, A Cruel Picture, or They Call Her One Eye. It goes by two different titles, and some other Miss 45, I think, is another example, the Abel Ferrara film. So movies like that where a woman is violently attacked or raped or assaulted, and then gets her revenge, basically, which is appropriate for the title. So I kind of knew the basic gist of the film, and I've seen some of those other films that I just mentioned. And I have to say that I really enjoyed this film. I thought it was good. I thought that the main character, the girl in it, is a complete badass, turns into a complete badass anyways when she starts basically turning the tables on the guys that are hunting her. It's very stylish. It's got a great kind of soundtrack to it. It is not the least bit believable. So I know after I watched it, I was looking through some of the comments on IMDb, and people were giving it like 1 star because it was unrealistic. Yeah, it's unrealistic. I mean, so if you are giving it 1 star on the basis that would never happen, then yeah, you're not going to enjoy this movie.
Yeah.
So you have to really, really suspend your disbelief, because there's definitely many, many unbelievable things that happen in the movie. But I think if you just go with it, just go with the ride, I think it's a fun time. I mean, as far as, again, not the assault part of it, but when she finally basically starts getting revenge on her, the guys that are hunting her, you're really, really rooting for her, and she's freaking awesome in this movie. Like, I liked it. I would definitely watch it again, as opposed to Scream.
I was looking it up on IMDb because it sounds familiar, and I was trying to figure out if it was a director, like a known director that did it, that I remember hearing about and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I her name, the director, I feel like it was whoever the director was, the name didn't look familiar, but the poster is very familiar with the neon font and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's got a cool poster. I don't know anybody that's in this movie. I've never seen any of them before. So, but I enjoyed it. I would recommend it, honestly.
Cool.
What about you?
So, I talked about how Scream is a little bit formulaic. That kind of leads me into what I've been watching. So I caught up on Star Trek Discovery, which is the Paramount Plus only series of Star Trek. I watched the latest 2 seasons, so I left off in season 2 before watching, and so I watched season 3 and season 4. And overall, I mean, I'm not the biggest Trekkie. I have friends that are way bigger Trekkies and have seen more of the shows, and I've dipped my toes in a few of the shows and never really finished all of them. Actually, Star Trek Discovery is probably the show I've watched the most episodes of all of the stuff being produced. And overall, I kind of like it. I do feel like, and the reason why I did formulaically into this is I feel like Michael Burnham character, the main character the show's focusing around, she kind of is one note, and she needs to grow, because I feel like every conflict she has in every episode and every season is all based on her personality, and it's just like, oh, I just feel like every episode now is kind of rote, where they have to do something, Michael Burnham doesn't like it, she's going to do it her own way, and then they're going to succeed even though she does it her own way, and then they're going to be like, all right, well, you did it your own way, but it worked out in the end, so congratulations. The next episode is kind of like that. So I just feel like they're getting very kind of rote in how the episodes are broken and how they play out. And I wish they would change. I also feel like there's a lot of great like supporting characters and stuff like that. Like Jason Isaacs in the first season is amazing. In this one we have I forget the guy from Mummy, Odin Fair.
Mm-hmm.
He's in it. He's awesome. Doug Jones plays a pretty prominent role in it, and he's in prosthetics. So there's a lot of great supporting.
Doug Jones is wearing prosthetics? No.
Yeah. No, not.
He never does that.
Yeah.
That's like saying Andy Serkis does motion capture roles all the time. That's not true.
Exactly.
Okay.
But they have a lot of great supporting characters. In fact, the next movie I'm going to talk about has she plays a character in the show, Michelle Yeoh, to play that. She does a great job, and so I like all the supporting stuff. I just feel like the last two seasons are missing like a really good big bad, like a really good strong antagonist for them to go up against. Like this last season 4 had like a species called the 10C, and in the end they were all these kind of like they weren't humanoid characters. So when you see them, it's hard to relate to them, if they're not a humanoid character, So it's like it's hard to see them as menacing or see them in a certain way and kind of have them as antagonists. And I really don't think season 4 really made them antagonists, but like what I think season 1 did so well was having like a really strong antagonist and that kind of stuff. And I wish the show would be less formulaic and also have an antagonist to kind of bump up against and, really like strong force that they have to fight against and stuff like that. So talked about Michelle Yeoh in Discovery, and she just had a movie come out this year, not too long ago, a couple weeks ago for us, directed by the Daniels, who did Swiss Army Man, called Everything Everywhere All at Once. I believe that is the correct title. I hope so. And
hey, I saw that too.
You did. We saw it together. And I think after the movie,
that was you sitting next to me.
Yeah, it was. I snuck in there. I think when I initially saw the movie, I was a little bit cool on the movie, but I think in sitting with it more, I've warmed up to it. I mean, the movie is just so bizarre and so crazy that if you like Swiss Army Man or if you like just bizarreness, it's just worth checking out and worth seeing and stuff like that. And hearing like how like small the behind the scenes, like the crew was behind the scenes, and how much of this was like a thing built out of love and care and like all that kind of stuff, and how it kind of came together just it just endears me more into the movie. And I forgot, do you remember the actor who plays Wayman's name is? It was a short round.
Ki Hu Kwan?
Can you say that again?
Ki Hu Kwan.
Ki Hu Kwan, I think, is amazing in this movie. And I'm not going to spoil it, but he kind of comes off dorky in the beginning of the movie, but you see other universes versions of him. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I can't believe it's the same actor playing both those versions, because like some of those alternate universe versions, you're like, this guy's like a force to be reckoned with. Like he's, cool or like handsome and all this kind of stuff. And it really like that took me back, like thinking about that,
mm-hmm.
So I really liked, I think, like I said, initially I was kind of cool when we were talking about the movie, but in like sitting with it, I've really kind of enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to seeing it again. I'm actually looking forward to like a 4K release of it to watch it. So what are your thoughts on Everything Everywhere All at Once?
Yeah, I think I liked it more than you did when we were talking about it after we saw it. I did like it a lot. I definitely think that it owes a nod to The Matrix as well as probably plenty of other films. But I still think that it's original in its own way, despite the fact that it borrows maybe elements from some of these other well-known films. I still think that it kind of packages things in its own way. I do like a lot of the visuals in it, and I agree with you. I think Ke Huy Quan, because I only know him from The Goonies and from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and he has not made a movie in like 20 years.
Yeah.
So this is him coming back, and I didn't see anything he did after like 1985, honestly. So I know him as a little kid.
Yeah.
And to see him grown up, I think he is great in this movie. I think Michelle Yeoh is great in this movie. I mean, I haven't seen Star Trek Discovery, but the only things that I've primarily seen her in are kind of action films where she's badass. She does her own stunts and things like that. So it's always nice to see those, like Super Cop or whatever. But it's great to see her in a movie like this where she does get to do some action stuff, but it has way, way more depth to it. It has a lot of drama to it as well. And another thing I like about the movie is I feel like it gets very deep and it's very philosophical. And it's one of those movies that you can have a long discussion with people about. And I feel like this is a movie that you can go as deep or as shallow as you want to. Mm-hmm. I feel like there's themes that some people see in the movie that maybe I don't necessarily see, but there may be some things that I see in the movie that other people don't see. And I think that's great because, again, I don't think that, like, because one of the movies that it sort of parodies, at least at one point, is kind of 2001, right?
Yeah.
And I know we talked about 2001. I feel like that's a really deep and hard to understand movie. And I'm not saying that there's only one way to interpret that movie, but I feel like there's definitely some certain concrete interpretations of 2001 that people kind of adhere to. And if you don't understand that, or if you don't feel that same way, you're kicked out of the club. I don't think that that's the case with this movie. I feel like it's saying a lot of different things. I mean, one of the things it's talking about is just being, happy with who you are, or who your kids are, or whatever, kind of embracing your family. But it says a lot more things than that, a lot more kind of deep and philosophical things like that. But if you only focus on that one thing, that's fine, But if you also think about kind of these, really existential and metaphysical kind of concepts that the film introduces or talks about, that's fine too. I think it's very cool. It's very layered in that way to me. But it was really well done, I feel like.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and like I said, I'm actually looking forward to watching it again at some point because
I'm glad that you got warmer on it. Yeah, that's awesome.
Sometimes I just need to sit with things. All right,
that happens.
It happens. Yeah, even to the best of us or the worst of us.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up because that's also some foreshadowing.
All right,
for Wednesday's episode.
There you go. All right, well that was what we've been watching. So we talked about A Hard Day's Night, or that's what we reviewed this week. So what movie did you decide to pair with that? And we kind of foreshadowed
several times.
I know what movie we're pairing with it, but why don't you let the audience know what movie
Yeah, so obviously we're talking about the Beatles and doing the Hard Day's Night, or A Hard Day's Night starring the Beatles. I felt like pairing that with another movie. I initially considered maybe doing Help, which is the follow-up movie that the Beatles did, but I instead concentrated on not the Beatles, but their fans. So on Wednesday, we're going to talk about a movie where their fans, some of their rabid fans, travel to New York City to try and see them in this very same year of 1964 on The Ed Sullivan Show in February. It's called I Want to Hold Your Hand.
All right. So stay tuned for that on Wednesday. Please like, subscribe, share, do all that social media stuff. Let us know what you think of A Hard Day Night. Down in the comments below, if you're watching us YouTube, we would be interested to check that out. Sure. Maybe there's another Beatles film documentary that you think we should review, because I haven't seen any of them. So we would gladly do that again. I'd like to dip my toes back into the wonderful world of the Beatles and all that stuff. And stay tuned on Wednesday when we go into Bob Zemeckis' I Want to Hold Your Hand, and we'll see you soon, guys. Bye.